Somebody asked us the other day, like, why we're so different in our training and what it is that we do. And I realized, like, the problem with majority of dog training approaches or methods today is that it's all avoidance based. The avoidance based program is like you're avoiding or you're pacifying. You're avoiding, you're pacifying. And when you're not teaching dogs how to deal or progress or work through stress or problems, you're setting them up to fail when the environment and situations aren't ideal. This is the same thing with parenting. I was watching a video the other day with a child who was throwing a tantrum, and they haven't even, on an airplane, they hadn't even left the tarmac or actually entered the tarmac, got on the tarmac.
That ear-piercing scream is an unruly child on a transatlantic flight to New York. The passengers describe an 8-hour flight from hell with non-stop and nerve-jangling screaming and fussing.
And the mother, she was saying, you need to turn on the Wi-Fi so that I can turn on the iPad and shut this baby up. And the stewardess was like, or the flight attendant was really nice and like, listen, we can't do that until we're up in the air.
Before the plane even took off from Germany, the child's mother could be heard asking a flight attendant to turn on the Wi-Fi so the child could be appeased with an iPad.
Let's get up, honey. Let me get his iPad and get the Wi-Fi going. So that he can the iPad and the Wi-Fi. Yes, I do. You don't have the Wi-Fi connection yet, do you? No.
And it's only those moments when you realize that in an ideal situation, you can just give the kid an iPad. But if the kid is never dealing with, you know, wanting something and not having it, now you're in a situation where you can't give the kid the iPad, you can't watch that movie or that cartoon or Baby Shark or whatever it is, and you're in a situation where the dog, in this case the child, has never dealt with that stress, and now they're throwing a fit because you don't have the ideal situation or circumstance. So the child's never actually gone through that situation before without getting what it wants. So the problem is, like, when avoiding or simply redirecting can't be the answer, now you're in trouble. You know, and like there was no, the kid was never facing that problem that he dealt with. He was always getting a pacifier. And a lot of like the positive reinforcement, force-free movement, for the most part, not all of it, is about like not pressuring the dog and really controlling your environment. And those are all things that are ideal. Those are all things that are ideal at the start of training, but doesn't set you up for long term. When you're in the business of redirecting through an avoidance-based, and when I say avoidance-based, I mean like avoiding the problem, avoidance-based training program, you're never helping the dog learn to cope, focus, and make better choices if the situation should arise that you can't control your environment. People will often make the comparison to like dolphins and look like we're training with positive reinforcement only, which scientifically that's not even true, but that's not the point of this right now. But what people are not like considering, they're like, oh, at zoos we do this, with tigers we're doing this, and it's good to understand the benefits of positive reinforcement. But like when you limit yourself to just that, you're always going to be working with containment, and that's something that you really can't do in, let's say, New York, for example. So like dolphins are still tanked, they're still caged. You see what I mean? So they don't have the environment as a distraction, like, I don't know, the ocean, seaweed, octopus, whatever it is. If positive reinforcement by itself was so powerful, why are the dolphins still tanked? Just leave them in the ocean and they'll just come back whenever. So you might be able to get away with that with pets that you can cage and keep in apartments, but just like we were talking with dolphins are being tanked or caged from the ocean. You can just go straight, right, and just go to 6th, yeah. With kids or with dogs, the ocean is outside the house, outside the apartment. The belief that you want to train in a way where you never stress the dog is actually going to set the dog up to fail. So you have to understand how to work with stress in a way that is productive, where you're not shutting the dog down, but they're being successful at the end of a somewhat stressful situation. And that can actually be done and accomplished starting with just a reinforcement-based foundation in the beginning and then working toward more challenging things. Whether you're in New York or a suburban kind of area, you can't control your environment. Same thing with like tigers in zoos. There's actually some really, really cool counter conditioning stuff that they're doing with giving them shots and vaccinations and like, you know, needles and like clicker training, which is all really good stuff to understand how to do. But the belief that that by itself is going to fix stuff when you're dealing with problems, you'll notice when they're dealing with these tigers, they're like gated. There's bars there, hippos, all that stuff. There's things to make sure if they charge, that is doing the work that basically we would need to be doing as dog owners here in the street. The answer can't be to avoid a dog just because the dog is bad with people, or avoid dogs just because the dog is bad with dogs. It's like you're gonna see those things, so you have to train in a way where maybe you're removing stress in the beginning to help a dog understand what to do, understand how to be successful, but then inevitably you're teaching them how to deal with stress and pressure in a way where they know that their choices get them through it, so they're no longer pressured by it. Anytime they're faced with a problem, just like if you're new to a job and you have to answer an email a certain way, it can be stressful in the beginning, but once you do it and do it and do it, it's no longer stressful because you do it regularly. So what we want is we want the dog to kind of understand when they're faced with a hurdle or a problem, they know how to handle that because we've shown them what to do. We've also made it really clear what not to do. So a lot of what these avoidance-based training programs are not setting clients up for is how to handle situations when the moment or the environment can't be controlled.